Let's take a step away from that. And President Akufo-Addo has urged member states of the African Union to work collectively to reform the global financial architecture, as well as build and strengthen the union's financial institutions. The president, who is also the AU champion for financial institutions, made the observation in a second report to the Assembly. He admonished member states to guard against the stranglehold of rating agencies, which he said has affected the cost and access to capital markets for African countries.
We need to guard against the continuing consequential stranglehold of the rating agencies, which has affected the cost and access to capital markets for African countries, and has during this COVID period resulted in the downgrading of many African countries, exacerbating even more their funding challenges. Furthermore, it is of the utmost importance that the G20 leaders stick to their commitment to reallocate to Africa SDR 100 billion agreed to at the Paris Summit in May 2021.
So you heard the President Akufo-Addo speaking. Let's engage Patrick Stevenson. He's an economic and research analyst, for a lot more on this. Thank you, Patrick Stevenson, for joining us. So many people have raised questions about how critical government has been over the last few days of the ratings of the economy so far. And these criticisms, they say, are unfair because over the past, or in the past period, these same agencies have rated the country and there's been no qualms at all. From where you sit, what seems to be the problem?
Well, I think there's a number of things that have to be straightened out. First of all, I think that the general concerns that the president articulates there, there are concerns that have been held within the development discourse for a very long time. There seems to be some mismatch, or the way the global financial architecture has been set up naturally, deprives a lot of African countries of access to the capital market. That's not a dispute at all. I mean, if you take your typical African country and compare, certain indicators, for example, growth rates, political stability, exposures of certain value chains to the economy, to a typical European country that may have the same profile, the tendency that the European country may have, better rating is likely the case. I mean, it's mostly, 70% the case than the African country. But that's just at the top level. I think that the fundamental problem is that we've had our own risk exposures that we can't seem to run away from. And I think that's the reality that the president has got to confront himself with. That a lot of, African countries equally have to deal with that. I mean, if you take our own case, this is a government that came into power, 2017, and you didn't see downgrades from 2017. In fact, it is based on the views of credit rating agencies that the government went to the capital markets and borrowed excessively from the international capital market. So you don't get to do that. And then when the rating does not favor you, reject it. For those who probably may not appreciate the complexities of what we're talking about, it's like your commercial banks back home. When you, as an ordinary person living somewhere in Abuna Konyago, who is not connected anywhere properly to the banking system, when you walk into a bank, any of the commercial banks in Ghana, to go and borrow money, as against a billionaire or a top business person who equally walks to that bank to borrow, at first glance, when they look at you, your risk profiles are different. Right. That's the difficult, that's the problem we are confronted with now. So you, the person who's poorer, has got to show and demonstrate your ability to pay back what you borrow, as against the person who's already in business, possibly better connected to the political system, connected better to the financial system. They get access to the money, in some cases at even zero rates. That's the reality. Even at home, the president has talked about that time and time again. Why are the banks not lending to small, medium-scale businesses? Because they are risky. So when you transpose that thinking to the global stage, why are banks and international capital markets charging poorer countries in Sub-Saharan Africa? Because you are risky. You have weak governance systems. Right. Look at what we have done. Right? So those are the realities that the president has got to confront. So move away from what's the broader, implications of things, geopolitical issues like colonialism, etc., or how it's a shape global financial architecture. That's fine. But you have serious governance problems that have implications for our ratings. And we must accept that and fix it.
Okay, so in fixing it, so I see that in 2019, for example, Moody's, rated the economy B3 with a stable outlook. 2020, another B3 with a positive outlook. Then 2021, B3 with a negative outlook, and now 2022, CAA1 stable. So this is where we are at the moment. How can government reverse this or attempt to fix it?
Well, I mean, so in all cases we've seen downgrades. It's not just so that what you have just read is from Moody's. We've seen S&P, we've seen Fitch as well. And in the case of Fitch, for example, they tell you that the outlook is negative. In the case of Moody's, you have seen the outlook is positive, but you've actually been downgraded to near junk, right? You've been downgraded to near junk status. So it clearly shows that you are in a very risky basket. What can you do? I think a number of things are quite important, and the government, appears to be thinking about that. The problem, the issue is whether these things ultimately will not inflict, significant hardships on the Ghanaian. One will be finding proper revenue streams for the country so that we reverse this behavior of going to the capital markets to borrow. And I'm one of those who have argued that the psyche of our current finance minister, who, to my mind, when we compare to other finance ministers we've had before, I think that sometimes maybe the investment banking orientation is a problem because, again, if you're looking at serious public investment that this government has made, majority of that investment, you've had to go to the capital markets to borrow. That's a problem. We have to find a way of pushing, the system to deliver without necessarily resorting to borrowing, which is why you're seeing discussions around things like e-levy, rationalization of the public expenditure, all of which have implications for growth. So again, it will mean a program like NAPCO, you have to cut it. Now you're hearing the government saying they're going to cut it.
Right.
So they can rein those sorts of expenditure that take out of the government coffers, but do not necessarily support that. So they can bring the fiscals within some appreciable levels over the longer term. But debating e-levy now, what exactly does that mean? But I'm saying that to make these decisions, Ghanaians are going to have to swallow some poison pills. Right. And they must make sure they make the politician pay for it come 2024, if they ever think that these things have to be turned around.